you're under constant strain. Like there's stress, and because my mastery is around the stress resolution, I've been able to, analyze it, dismantle it, pull it apart, and put it back together, and understand that there's a missing word in medicine, in holistic care, in in traditional Chinese medicine, and the word that's missing is strain. And
Mhm.
so when you are under a level of stress that's beyond your capacity to recover from with effective amounts of sleep, then you're under strain. And
Mhm.
strain can build a certain level of resilience until you reach a certain point. Because, as you know, our bodies are designed to recover and to repair and to restore
Mm.
while we're sleeping. But when
Exactly.
you get to the point of being under strain, now you can no longer get efficient sleep.
I never give up. I never give up. I never give up.
Hi guys, welcome back to Neff Inspiration, my show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stefan Neff. Today, I've got the honor of interviewing Christopher Lee Maher. Christopher is an amazing man who has dedicated his life to become the best of the best of the best. And he did, by all intents and purpose. He has become a Navy SEAL. He wanted to be an Olympian. And he is just a man who knows how to create the perfect mixture of discipline, of drive, of going out there, showing up for himself. That in its own right would be huge accomplishments. But then he is also a man who has learned what happens when you push too hard, too far. Because your body, your mind, your spirit can only do so much. And here he was suddenly finding himself in a very dangerous zone. And then how do you get yourself out of that? Because all the principles, etc., that you've learned and made yourself to become that unique, driven man is often not working when all is down, when the cards are down and you are knee deep in shit. So I can't wait. Christopher, welcome to my show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be
Yeah,
here.
that's right. Oh, man, where to start with you? I mean, how did you become a SEAL to start off with that? That is tier one operator. Yes, there are many SEALs out there, but it's not so easy to become that person. How the hell did you get that that drive to get there?
Yeah, I had a friend that I went to boarding school with, and his name was Mark Riggleman. And Mark's mom's name was Martha. And Martha showed up on my doorstep of my 20th birthday on June 5th. And she said, "Hey, listen, you're coming to live with me and my son and my daughter and my husband. I've heard so many things about you, and you're such a special young man. Grab your things." And at the time, I was living with a couple of my friends, and I thought, what's going on here? Like, and then suddenly a bell went off in my head, and I felt really safe in her presence. And I said, "Okay." I grabbed a bag of my clothes, shoved them all in there. I hopped in her car, and I went to her house. And what happened is, after living there for 3 months, she got access to buy a new home. And so, me, one of my other buddies from boarding school, Jody Lutz, and then Mark Riggleman, packed up all of their effects and moved them to this new house. And when we found our new sleeping space and started to put things in the proper places, I came upon a magazine, a biannual magazine about SEAL training and Navy SEALs. And when I looked at the cover, and you see six boat crews of guys, or maybe there was eight, and they've got a log, a telephone pole on their shoulder, and they're running down the beach with these white t-shirts on, these
Mm.
green fatigue pants, and these black boots, and they're grimacing on their face, sweat coming down their brow. I looked at that picture and I thought, they could challenge me. That's what I need in order to grow into who I'm going to become. And then within 6 weeks, I was gone. I was headed in that direction.
uh,
And that's
uh.
sort of how that happened.
It's interesting because for me, just you telling this story tells me that there was already someone pulling the bow all the way back. So your tension in the bow was there. What pulled that tension? Because we either running towards something or running away from something. And often we do both at the same time. How was your childhood? How
Yeah, my
was there was that the reason that you really wanted to prove yourself?
I think when I initially went in, I wasn't interested in proving myself to anyone. I think what happened is I honestly wanted to have a challenge.
Hmm?
And I was looking at them and I read through the magazine and I thought, oh, this will be interesting. I was a child. I loved hide and go seek as a game, right? I loved sneaking up on people and scaring them, right? I liked crawling around at night. It sort of fit into a bunch of the things that I loved. And my favorite character at the time on TV and in the movies was 007. And in my mind, I was going to SEAL training. I was going to be like 007. I was going to be a special agent with a fast, sexy car and a beautiful, sexy woman. And I was going to be traveling all over the world solving these crimes. And, it was very different than that. When I got to SEAL training, it was like, oh no, you're not going to be 007. You're going to have to get down in the mud
Uh,
and get dirty and get ugly and you're going to have to suffer. And so my initial idea, I think, probably was more to get challenged and the fantasy of what life could be. I was never the kid who was paying attention in school. I was always sitting in the front. If I sat in the front row in school, I was sleeping. If I sat in the back row, I was looking out the window, fantasizing about what I was going to experience. So I had all these little dreams and fantasies in my head. And when I saw that magazine, they all coalesced simultaneously and they lit a spark. And then I
Beautiful.
wrote down a little sheet of all the things that were going to be able to be possible when I made it through SEAL training. I said I would write a book. I said I would write two books. I said I would write two albums. I said I would go to school and get a master's degree. And I said I would focus on getting to the Olympic trials. All that spawned the moment that I saw that magazine and I sat and wrote down all those things. And basically, my bucket list got developed from that image. And it made sense because I needed that kind of fortitude. I needed that kind of drive. I needed to have that kind of emotional resilience. I needed to have that kind of physical resilience to kind of do the things that I was doing. But the challenge was I attempted to apply a SEAL team mindset to real world life, and that doesn't work. And that's where I began to break down.
Interesting. So did you go, well, to be a SEAL, you need to sign up for 4 years, isn't it? From the
Yeah,
word
yeah.
go.
So
That's right.
yeah, you
So
need to sign
how
up for 4 years, but once you graduate from SEAL training, you have to do what's called an oblit, which means you agree that since they gave you specialized training,
mm,
you're going to give them more years of service.
absolutely.
So by the
Oh,
time I exited
yeah,
that environment, it had been almost 8 years in the
right,
military.
right. Wow. All the
So,
time in
but
the SEALs?
all the time in the SEALs,
Mm,
once I got to SEAL training. Before
exactly.
that, I had to go to a place called the USS Fulton, which was a subtender in New London, Connecticut, which was not in my plan. And I was very frustrated. So I was like, I came in to be a Navy SEAL. I didn't come here to scrub floors and to sand walls and to paint the outside of the ship. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, this wasn't in my fantasy. I didn't see 007 doing these menial jobs. So I became very masterful at avoiding work that I didn't want to do.
Again, this is probably something that is encouraged in a tier one operator to be able to think outside of the square, to be able to
Yes.
adapt, change, overcome. After all, these are sort of the core principles of it. So I guess you could look at it like a bit of training there. But I think that the interesting thing is that you say, well, I really, that part of my journey started at the age of 20. And how were you doing physically beforehand? Because most young people, or many young people nowadays, live a very sedentary lifestyle. To have that
Mhm.
same kind of experience, finding that little magazine and thinking, wow, I do a seal, and they struggle and are out of breath when they get up from their couch playing games. Hmm. So, how was your setup from a physical and mental point of view prior to the time you found that magazine?
Yeah, my physical setup at the time was I was healthy in the sense that I was youthful
Mm,
and I was a top tier athlete when
good.
in my
Okay.
younger years.
Yeah.
And I went to a privately well endowed boarding school in Hershey, Pennsylvania, named Milton Hershey School. And it was a very laborious institution, meaning that we were getting up at 5:15, 5:30 in the morning to work on the farm. And farm work is hard work. I don't know if
Mm.
you've ever baled hay and baled straw and then had to store straw and hay in barns and then
Yeah.
shovel. Because in our barn, I think we probably had about 38 to 42 different cows. So you're doing all the milking, which means you're squatting every day. You know, you're changing out their sleeping pen.
Yeah.
It's hard work. So before other kids went to school, I had already put in a solid
Okay.
hour and a half
Perfect.
of good labor since
Perfect.
I was very
Yeah.
young. And I started going to school there when I was 7 years old.
Yeah.
And so the discipline was there, but for me, the discipline was forced
Absolutely.
because when you're in boarding school, you have to do what everyone else is doing,
Sure.
or you're going to have to exit from the institution if you don't compromise.
Mm.
And so I sort of begrudgingly did my chores because I never wanted to go to boarding school. It wasn't a conscious choice of mine, it was a choice of my grandmother's because she was older. She had two young boys thrust on her at the age of 64. She'd already raised her children. She was moving towards retirement. And the best thing for her was to be able to house us during Christmas, Easter, Thanksgiving, and the summer holiday. But during the rest of the year, she got to be on her own schedule.
Mm.
And I can understand why she would want that. You know, her energy was pretty inconsistent. She
Mm.
struggled with managing her stress levels with cigarettes and alcohol and reading. But she was a very sweet, kind woman. She was never um, embarrassing in the way that she drank or anything that she did. She was very classy, she was very kind, she was very generous.
Right.
And so I think that everything that I had gone through from the time that I was 7 years old, landing in boarding school, prepared me to be able to easily traverse the challenges
Mm.
at an emotional level in SEAL training. I think in SEAL training, other kids who hadn't been prepared, like I was, the emotional effect was very difficult for them, which is why the attrition rate
Mm.
is 92 point, I don't know, 2 or 92.5% going
Mm.
through SEAL training. So that means for every 100 guys that show up, only seven and a half of them are going to make it through the program.
And
And
then
so
there
I
will be
was uniquely prepared.
exactly. I was about to point that out. But then this is not the only attrition rate, because then thereafter you're on constant probation, so to speak, because you then have to grow into the team. And you might have made it through physical and emotional grit through the initial training, but then how do you integrate yourself? So again, you need to work very closely in a very hard-driven team of type A personalities. So I can see
Yes.
that this is a constant competition, a constant, I guess, a constant stress, we could say.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
whilst it is a lot of people thrive in that environment, they want to prove themselves and they prove themselves every single day. These are the kind of 110% guys. And I never became a SEAL for crying out loud. I can't even, I'm not even in the same league as you. Yet I see the same traits in me. I was never happy. I was never grateful for a win. And so I always sought more. I always wanted more. The day I did my part one exam in anesthesia, it was quite an achievement. I did it the first time around. The exam finished at lunchtime. By 2 o'clock, I was already sitting in the preparation for the next exam, which was 2, 3 years out. But that was so classic when I look back. I was always driven by external validation, or it was a huge part, at least for my drive, and I was never happy. Does that ring a bell with you?
I think for me, the benefit um, is that I think because I never had to work through my mom's inner deficiencies and insecurities, limiting beliefs and fears, and my father's,
Oh,
I sort of had a very light heart and
beautiful.
was very happy
Oh, wow.
internally. And I
Okay.
always had an immeasurable amount of gratitude for the situations that I was in because I was orphaned when I was 7 years old.
Hmm.
And when you go to your very first foster home, you realize that reality can change on a dime and that
Hmm.
I'm not in control. And
Hmm.
fortunate for me, I was always spiritually conscious. Okay. And so I was
Beautiful.
always good hearted. And, um, and so my drive, I think, was was purposeful. It was mission driven in the sense that if I traverse over all of the vast experiences that I've had, I would feel comfortable and confident telling you that I was designed to do exactly what I did,
Beautiful.
and that I was the one person that I think that God put on this planet to go through all of that and to be able to balance the blueprint. And I
Nice.
feel like the universe has always trusted me to be able to go into the deepest and the darkest levels
Hmm.
of confusion and self righteousness and fear and anxiety and anger, and be able to transmute those and bring them back to wholeness. And I feel like that was my life's purpose. And that spark of light
Yeah.
was always inside of me. And it was driving me from a position of love rather than a position of fear, because I never had a father who was telling me I needed to be this, I needed to be that.
Yeah.
I never had a mother who was telling me I needed to be this, I needed to be that. And my grandmother and my Aunt Elizabeth, Aunt Betty, they were hands off. Everyone was hands off with me. No
Right.
one ever pushed me to become anything.
Right.
And so it felt like I was being guided, like the bow that you speak of. And as it was being pulled back, it was being pulled back by my heartstrings.
Nice. Okay.
And I love people. I've always been very universal.
Yeah.
Like when I was a kid, I had friends who were fat. When I was a kid, I had friends who were dumb. When I was a kid, I had friends who were silly. I had friends who were super, super smart. I just happened to be kind of kid that got along with everyone
Nice.
at all times. And it was easy for me to, and I have no idea how I accomplished this. It was easy for me to figure out who to trust and who not to trust because I was very energetically sensitive from a very young age.
Hmm.
And I was very comfortable with little things. Okay. Very small little treats would make me feel fulfilled and loved and cared for at a level that allowed me to maintain my my focus to be in the moment. And I think when you're an orphan and you go through difficult things, you realize that the moment is the master. And
Hmm.
I can't count on anything. I mean, my mom took her life when I was 7 years old, and she was the guiding light in my life at that time. And my mom was no joke. Like, she would punch you in the chest as hard as she could if you did something wrong. There was no smacking you on the rear end. Okay. She was both Godzilla and Tinkerbell. And so I learned to toe the line pretty easily. I don't think I came into my awareness of being bothered by certain things that happened in my childhood until I started to wake up.
Mm.
I was sort of living and moving forward without questioning what was actually occurring
Indeed,
while I
indeed.
was in the moment of my experiences,
Mm.
because I didn't have any control. There was no control in boarding school. If I
Sure,
pouted, I got punished.
sure.
If I cursed, I got punished. If I pushed back, I got punished. So I had more chores to do than all the other kids in my student home because I pushed back often. And then for me, there was only you're going to surrender to the moment. And I
Mm.
just felt like God was like, look, I'm not going to try to break you, but you're going to have to learn to play the game of life, even though you don't like it.
It's beautiful.
And there will be
Mm.
benefit
Yeah.
to the things that you don't like. And these were lessons that I was learning at 8 years old, 9 years
Mm.
old, 12 years old, 15 years old. And I
Mm.
think when you grow up in the comfort of a home and you have a mom and dad and you have consistency, that consistency allows you to sit back and rely on other people for your
Mm.
own emotional well being.
That's true.
And I had to develop my own emotional well being and my own emotional awareness to be able to maintain some sense of sanity. And
Yeah.
so I have a very unique, not only life, but a unique perspective that started getting developed at a very young
Mm.
age.
And you speak very positively about that. Yet, at the same breath, you mention the darkness. And it was the darkness that ultimately led you away from this path as a SEAL. Or this is a broader issue here. It's not just the SEAL. I think you becoming a SEAL and being in the forces for 8 years, I think this was just part of a puzzle picture that showed the old Christopher, that showed the old version who worked really hard, gave 110%. Still, there was this rebelliousness in there that wanted to boil over, wanted to come out, exploded from now and then, only to be pushed back down. There was all this stress in the background that you can just sense in between your words. That was just waiting to erupt. What ended your SEAL time? And I know that you're on a physical basis alone did some incredible feats. So your body percentage, body fat percentage dropped down to 1.8%. I want to slap you silly for doing exactly that because if you come less than 5, less than 4, you're sort of pushing your boundaries to a dangerous, dangerous, dangerous level. And this was just one marker where you clearly overdid it. I'm sure there were many other biomarkers when I look at them with hindsight, combined with the amount of stress that you were in, for crying out loud. Your body had no chance. What was
Yeah, I
happening
mean,
there?
Yeah, I mean, you're under constant strain. Like there's stress, and because my mastery is around the stress resolution, I've been able to, analyze it, dismantle it, pull it apart, and put it back together, and understand that there's a missing word in medicine, in holistic care, in in traditional Chinese medicine, and the word that's missing is strain. And
Mhm.
so when you are under a level of stress that's beyond your capacity to recover from with effective amounts of sleep, then you're under strain. And
Mhm.
strain can build a certain level of resilience until you reach a certain point. Because, as you know, our bodies are designed to recover and to repair and to restore
Mhm.
while we're sleeping. But when
Exactly.
you get to the point of being under strain, now you can no longer get efficient sleep. And so the thing that broke me out of the SEAL teams was a concept that I've lived by. And it's a basic German principle. I was raised in Pennsylvania, which is a state that was settled by Germans from Mannheim. And so we understand the concept communally and culturally and familially called fair and equitable exchange. And it's a principle that I've always lived by because in Milton Hershey School, all the kids got the same types of shoes. All the kids got the same types of coats. All the kids got the same exact type of cake. So everything was fair and everything was equitable. We went to school, we worked on the farm, but we got a free education. I paid for my education by getting up at 5:15 in the morning and
Mm,
slaving over those cows all year long. Okay, so a
beautiful.
lot of people look at Milton Hershey School and they think, oh, well, guess what? You got to go to the world's most privately well endowed boarding school for free. No, I actually worked. Okay. And
Mm,
so when there was a point where I was going to transfer from SEAL Team 5 to SEAL Team 2, and there was a buddy of mine at SEAL Team 2 that wanted to switch places. He wanted to come to the West Coast. I wanted to go to the East Coast because I was raised in Pennsylvania. SEAL
yeah,
Team 2 was in Virginia Beach,
I
and
see.
it would have been easy for me to go home on the weekends and spend time with family members and
Mm,
friends. And I was signing the paperwork, and then I said, they're paying for his personal effects to be shipped from Virginia Beach to SEAL Team 5. Are you going to pay for mine? And they say, no, we're not going to pay for it because you want to leave SEAL Team 5. And initially, I just nodded my head and sort of went along with it. And then when I got home, it started bothering me. And what started bothering me is it seemed unfair and inequitable. If SEAL Team 2 was going to pay for his stuff, why wouldn't SEAL Team 5 pay for mine? And I couldn't get over the lack of fairness. And because I couldn't get over the lack of fairness, I decided that when Christmas vacation came up, which was like 3 or 4 weeks from now, I would during Christmas vacation, I was going to go over to the Naval Amphibious Base and I was going to check out of SEAL Team 5 because my time was up. They were going to offer me an extension plus a bonus, and I was going to go for it until they pulled that move. And then I said, I will never be part of an organization where exchange is unfair and inequitable. And so I leaned on my core principle for living. And because you have to have values, and I understood what I valued the most. So I decided I was going to go out on my own. During those 3 weeks, I looked across my life and I said, when was my life actually the best? And my life was actually the best when I was running and I was competing as a runner. So I said, okay, I'm going to train and hopefully get to the Olympic trials. I'm going to set a goal. I don't know if I'll get there. It's probably well beyond my capacity. I'm 27 years old. This might be a fantasy, but I'm going to push the envelope anyway. And then I decided to extract myself from the SEAL teams and figure out how to build a life that honored my own set of values. I was no longer going to honor someone else's, even with the prestige of being a Navy SEAL, even everything that I had accomplished. I could have had a very solid career. I had a high aptitude. I could have probably got them to agree to allow me to go to college, come back as an officer. But I thought, you know what? I can figure this out on my own. And
mm,
if you're not going to support me as much as someone else in the SEAL teams is getting supported, I'm no longer going to participate in this organization.
mm.
So that's how that
Wow.
happened.
Wow. And that is intriguing because part of me wants to ask you, hang on, is that not just the open tooth cream paste, toothpaste thingy that is left open that's led to the divorce? It wasn't the toothpaste that led to the divorce. There were many other reasons there. So part of me automatically wants to ask that reason. Were there not other things there? The other more pressing question that comes to me is, hang on, you lived a certain lifestyle that was dominated by violence. Because how many times were you deployed in your teams?
For, let's say, a total of 12 months.
Yeah, okay. Um, you would have in between gone through very hard, very realistic training. You train like you work, kind of a thing. So how do
Yeah,
you
we
switch?
definitely do that.
That's my point. So there you're living a life that is very unique. And now you say, okay, it's Christmas time. I switch over to Civvy Street. Yeah, that doesn't work so well. How many of your colleagues ended up knee deep in the shit when they tried to do that? Or when they had to do that with injuries, for example. Did you get many injuries whilst you were with the SEALs?
I injured my low back on the right side. Now, in SEAL training, you're always dealing with overuse injuries, but these are
Hmm.
mostly soft tissue injuries,
Yeah,
mostly tendonitis, bicep tendonitis, iliotibial band friction syndrome, plantar fasciitis,
exactly.
runner's knee,
Yeah.
ruptured bursa in the left hip, all those kinds of things. You're dealing with soft tissue issues.
Mm,
But for me, I'm going to push back a little bit because I really want you to understand that in my mind, I was loving what I was doing,
oh,
right? In the sense that there's a lot of, the word is camaraderie in the SEAL teams, right? You're having a lot of fun. Deployments are fun. You're working hard. Your body's strong. You're very young,
mm,
and if someone pushes up against my core principle, the things that you value the most, like if you go over a list by values, there's values that you would end relationships for.
mm,
There's values that you would die for.
mm,
Like I would die for freedom.
mm.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
And then there's values that you would kill for, right? Meaning, in a sense, if you're a Navy SEAL, you're in that sense of I will put my life on the
Mm,
line and take other lives in order to uphold my values. Well, my
mm,
core value was fair and equitable exchange. Now, I could understand if I
mm.
was a new guy in the SEAL teams, but I had already put in my time, and and I was really good at what I did.
Understand.
Okay, I was a good operator.
Mm,
So when they pushed up against that place, I think maybe there may have been some underlying things that I didn't agree with, but they were never enough to sort of push me out of the SEAL teams.
mm.
I was happy in my mind. I was already spending the money from the bonus.
Okay. Fair
Okay.
call. Fair
I
call. So
was,
you had
I
come to a
was,
natural end there already
yeah,
as far as this chapter in your life was concerned.
yeah. And I think probably for me, and you may be able to relate with this, people who are born with mental prowess, their ability to get bored is higher and it happens faster.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Because once you're doing the same thing over and over and over again and you've built some mastery over it, if I look back, maybe an underlying driver for me was, oh, we're doing the same thing again and again. But I will say what you pushed back on that's very important for the listeners to understand is when I left the SEAL teams, I was still living a SEAL team lifestyle. And that is where I got into trouble.
What exactly, what part of that lifestyle was detrimental? Because if I look at it, you have got plenty of exercise, and you are now no longer pushing maybe as much. So if at all, maybe less injuries, and maybe you listen to your body a little bit more. You probably have got a good grasp on nutrition. You probably have got a good grasp on sleep and balance. Would that not be fair to say? Or what was in that lifestyle that
Yeah,
drove
it's
you
in, yeah, yeah.
into the brink?
Yeah, in the lifestyle, going to bed late and waking up early,
Right.
right? So I'm still doing the right things during the day. I'm going to school, I'm getting my studies done, but at night, I'm still going out and I'm partying,
Ah, okay.
right? I'm still going out and being
Sure,
extremely social.
sure.
So I'm trying to manage school, manage a social life, and manage my ambition, my physical ambitions.
Yeah.
And when you're in SEAL training and SEAL teams, you can eat anything you want, right? But when you're trying to be a high performing athlete,
Yeah.
you can't eat anything you want.
I see what you
You
mean.
have to, you really have to shift and change. And I didn't have a holistic education. My education was like, you get up, you work hard,
Yeah.
and everything works out. I bought into the things that I was taught at boarding school that had
Yeah,
limitations. Life doesn't
absolutely.
work out that way. You can show up and you can work hard, but that doesn't mean you're going to get everything you want out of life. And I was living a fantasy, believing that I could push the edge of the envelope. Basically, what I was trying to create was the stress and the strain that I experienced in SEAL training and SEAL teams. I was trying to create that as a civilian by living a very similar lifestyle.
Right.
And then something
Interesting.
was going to fall apart. And the thing that fell apart was the thing that always tells the truth. The thing, my mind can tell me 1,000 lies, right, to its own convenience. But the body always tells you the truth. If you have neck pain, you have neck pain, right? If you're putting too much stress and strain on your SI joint, it's going to push back into you. The
Mm.
swelling's going to develop.
Yeah.
It's going to push back on the surrounding nerve tissue, and you're going to feel discomfort. But my mind can tell me, like, no, everything's fine. No, go to practice with some alcohol on your breath, and you can still run hard, right? So I was reluctant to give up all of the other things and the lifestyle that I was living while I was a full-time student and a full-time athlete.
No,
And
beautiful.
it didn't work. It worked against me in one sense. It worked against my ability to achieve what I wanted at a physical level, but on a spiritual sense, it helped me destroy my body at the joint level and have to research and figure out a plan how I was going to put myself back together. Because most
Yeah.
people don't understand, I started losing my hearing, like a sufficient amount of hearing, by the time I was 29 years old. I started losing the majority of my vision by the time I was 31, my close up vision. And then I started to become a full blown insomniac, but I was still doing everything. I was
Absolutely.
still showing up for work. I was still running a business. I was still going to school. I was still training, even though I had all these symptoms that were in my face, that were in my body. I was still choosing to live a SEAL team mindset, which was, well, if you don't mind, it doesn't matter. You just keep plugging forward, because I was resilient mentally. I
Yeah.
was resilient psychologically. I was resilient energetically. And so even on 3, 4 hours sleep, that
Yeah.
was broken up with me getting up to urinate 6 to 10 times a night some nights. Okay. I was still choosing to live my lifestyle.
Oh dear. I hear you. I hear you. Your
Okay.
body
So
is shouting out loud, "Hey,
hey,
stop!" And you
stop.
still didn't listen to the signs and symptoms.
Yes.
Oh
Because I
goodness.
didn't know anything else.
Sure, sure,
I
sure, sure.
thought that, hey, if you run up against a problem, you just keep running directly at it. I didn't
Exactly.
know, like, no, 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 that isn't what you do with the body. You rest.
Hmm.
Well,
Ah,
I didn't know anything about rest. Rest. What do you mean rest?
okay. I really get you. Now, so obviously here you were in this very slippery slope where your body
Yes.
was screaming at every bloody level. I don't want to know how your gut microbiome looked like at that time. I don't want to know
Oof.
what your hormones would have been. They would have been all over the
No.
show. Talk about adrenal depletion, and whilst we do no longer really so focus on the adrenals nowadays, we rather understand it as a mitochondrial disease where you're basically hammering your energy powerhouses, and with that have the flow-on effects. My goodness. Plus, add a few toxins in there because you would have been deployed in some interesting places, and you would have
Yes.
indeed been exposed to some environmental factors that would have contributed to all that. So
Oh, yeah. I
we
had all
we
kinds of skin issues.
mm,
I had
uh,
all kinds of
interesting.
scalp issues.
Yeah.
Red spots would just show up on my body out of nowhere.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Um, you know,
Yeah.
hair falling out. I
Yeah.
mean, just a litany of symptoms, like
Beautiful.
a Christmas list.
Exactly. Exactly, and that's such a typical thing, and we see that again and again and again in patients who have been exposed to this combination of chaos that then led to internal chaos. I mean, how else can
I
you
have to laugh
say
at that. That's poetic. Yeah, to say that again. Would you say the
combination of chaos?
combination of chaos?
Yeah, because
Yes.
it's not just one thing. We always want to
No.
say, oh, what's the root cause? That one thing. And then we try to focus on one thing, and it never works out like that. You need to have a look. We call it the cocktail effect
Mm.
in functional medicine, where you actually say, well, okay, hang on. You've put this much in there. Can you really say that it was the vodka that gave you that massive hangover the next day? Or was it maybe the combination of five, six different things that maybe didn't work out so well for you? And here we are. And we keep forgetting that. We want smart, quick fixes. We want that tablet, that injection that cures 40 years of us mistreating our bodies. And
Hmm.
it's just nuts. But that is the mentality. And that doesn't work. Inevitably, it might be a band-aid for a short period of time. Were there band-aids that you put on? What did you think initially? How can I deal with that?
Yeah, I think the first Band-Aid that I went with was wheatgrass.
All right. Okay. Okay.
Okay. And whoa, like and juicing. Juicing and wheatgrass was the first Band-Aid. And I started feeling, better. But my goodness, that drink was, I dreaded every day. I would do 2 to 3 ounces. I would just head over to Jamba Juice and, okay, give me 2, 3 ounces of wheatgrass. And, oh,
I know.
and then
Awful.
I said, okay, I'm going to drink this until this tastes good to me. That was my idea. And then I went to Jimbo's Food Market in Del Mar. It's an
Yeah.
organic food market. It's
Yeah.
my favorite grocery store.
Uh-huh.
And they had this thing called Green Bliss, which was celery, lemon, parsley with a tiny bit of apple.
Uh-huh.
And I would drink that down every day. And I said, I'm going to drink this until this tastes good to me. And I would be sitting at that counter sometimes 30 minutes, just like a sip. Oh, and I knew that because I saw other people, they would order it and they
Yeah.
would just start drinking it.
Yeah.
No facial expressions, no moaning, no whining. And I'm watching them and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, okay, there's something wrong with me. And so that was the first step. And then I started to go see this guy named Stephen Bolger, who was a Heller worker, and his teacher trained with Ida Rolf. And so I started to focus on structural integration.
Mhm.
Okay. And then that gave me a little bit of progress. The joint pain had diminished a bit, and I started to feel hopeful. And I think the hopefulness is is what really drove me. When someone's under unrelenting levels of discomfort,
Mm.
when you get a reprieve, even for an hour,
Mm.
you're grateful. You're so happy. And this is where I think that gratefulness for my childhood really
Mm.
benefited me. Because
Nice.
I had the attitude of gratitude, and all the people that I was working with, I got them vested in my story. I got them vested in my healing process. And then I started reading everything I could on detoxing. Okay, everything about bentonite clay, everything I could about
Right.
fasting,
Okay.
everything I could about the microbiome. And I
Okay.
just started educating myself. If somebody wrote a book, I read it. And then I would always ask every healer, every guide, every wellness coach that I went to, who do you know who could help me? And basically, I took all my resources that I made from running my business and I put them into putting myself back together in order to heal all the damage from my childhood SEAL trainings, the
Mhm.
SEAL teams, and my lifestyle. And I only devoted myself to that. Every penny went towards wellness. Every hour of my day went towards wellness when I wasn't working, helping other people get well.
Beautiful.
So I
Nothing.
basically turned SEAL training into heal training. And
Lovely way of
then I
putting it.
went towards colon hydrotherapy.
Yeah.
And then I started getting colonics and started, releasing parasites. And I mean, like I would save them. Okay, so my friends, I'd be like, you won't believe I had released the parasite. I would scoop them out of the toilet because people think it's nonsense when you tell them
Yeah,
that. I'm like, oh, you think it's nonsense? Come down
yeah,
to my house,
yeah.
and I would have them in a clear container, glass container, in my fridge, and I would pull them out and I would show them the various different types of parasites that would come out.
Oh
And
dear.
then once I understood that you could have monsters living inside of you, I got really, really focused and really, really motivated
Hmm.
to now use a synergistic effect. So I was taking tension and stress out of my body 5 to 6 hours a day. I was only eating whole organic food. Okay. I was eating very little meat.
Hmm.
Okay. Even though I needed it, I wasn't aware of that at the time. I needed
Right.
more, and I was working on my microbiome, my
Nice.
biotics, my
Yep.
cleansing. I was
Yep.
just everything about my life was wellness. And I said, look, the only way out of this back into health and back into balancing the blueprint is to put myself back together. And then
Beautiful.
my vision started to return. My hearing started to return. I and the most important thing that I did, and for anyone who's listening, the most important thing that I did was I blacked out my house. So when I went to sleep, there wasn't one photon of light coming
I
into
love
my
it.
space.
Love it.
And when I went to sleep, I no longer woke up in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And my kidneys and my prostate, all of that started to heal. And before I knew it, and ever since then, I don't get up in the middle of the night to urinate. I'm almost 60,
Nice.
okay, which is unheard of for men
Yep.
approaching my age,
Yep.
okay? And I just systematically devoted my life to become wellness.
Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. And what you did so many things at the same time. Having said that, we are not talking about a period of 3 months or 6 months. This learning phase,
No,
this creating new habit phase, that has started. Well,
yes.
when did that start? When put a timeline to it?
The timeline to that would have been Jeff Higgs would have come over to my house. This would I would have been 30 years old. But I already had started the rolfing and the wheatgrass probably
Exactly.
at 29.
So there you go. Let's make it round 30, and now you're about 60. So that's
Yeah.
30 years of learning that you have distilled into that. And I think that is so important. Again, coming back to our tendency to try something and expect, hey, there is this new tea. It's called detox tea from some named doctor. Oh, I'll buy $100 worth of that and I want it all fixed. It doesn't work like that. Your story shows us to which degree you can become a different and nearly superhuman being.
Yes.
Because I bet
Yes.
if I was to do some extensive testing on you, your biological age, despite all the damage that you had done, what is actually less than your chronological age. And that is bizarre. The same thing happened to me, not with the markers of biological age, but for example with my heart. I had I've got probably a strong family history of heart disease, and certainly from my father's side, and I lived a rough life. I did not pay attention to all the good things. I did not rest. I had shitloads of stress, more drama than I like to care, and I drank like a fish. So come on. So when I was in my mid 50s, I actually had a a CT calcium score. And the CT calcium score is a CT scan of my chest, and they look at the amount of calcium that is in my coronary arteries. And I
Mm,
expected to hear some very bad messages there. Turns out they were as clean as that of a baby. And I thought, how was that? Because I had already started transforming like you.
hmm.
So you can undo damage in a dramatic way if you know what to do.
Yes.
But there's never a
Yes.
quick fix. And
No.
so far, we have talked about the band-aids, the wheatgrass, but I love it how you focus on the sleep. It is so, oh, we nowadays know there's so many studies out there, 7 to 9 hours with a good sleep architecture. We have got good phases of non-REM and good phases of REM sleep. And basically, there is so much that you can do. You're not powerless over your sleep. No, you are controlling the things, and I love it how you black out your thing. I was like that in the past. I was completely dark. It's very difficult to do that in New Zealand homes, especially
Mm,
now I'm renting, so it's a bit. But yeah, give me back a place where I can modify. I will do exactly that. Let the
yeah.
darkness come over the earth.
And I go to the dark room. So
Yeah,
I just got back from Thailand,
yeah,
and I go out to Manchak Chia's place, and he has a wellness holistic resort, which
yeah.
is 110 acres,
Wow.
has a saltwater pool. He has a Paqua clinic, 7 different types of treatments. He has an amazing dining hall with every kind of food for every type of person's diet. He brings all these interesting beverages and drinks and herbs from all over the world.
Mm.
And I went through a dark room treat where I spent 30 days in absolute darkness
Bloody
to
hell.
rebuild back the health of my pituitary and my pineal gland by releasing uh, the maximal amount of saturation of melatonin into my blood so that I could reach a level of absolute maximal saturation of pinoline and OM5E and DMT. And I stayed in that space for 30 days straight. And then
Many for
I,
many, I just give you a comparison there.
yeah,
There was a beautiful study where people were put into a room with zero sensory stimulation, and they just had the thing was they only had to sit there 15 minutes with themselves, and the only thing they could do, there was a button there that they could press, which gave them an electric shock. Now, the vast majority are in that experiment. They couldn't sit still 15 minutes with themselves and started shocking themselves, despite the fact that it was a painful stimulus. That tells you what most people are out there. Now, for me to be 1 hour in a sensory deprivation chamber is an interesting experience. 30 days? What
30
did you
days.
do in 30 days?
What I did in 30 days is very interesting because he has you on a fast.
Yeah,
And so you're drinking detox teas,
yeah,
you're only taking certain supplements to reduce the amount of parasitic
yeah,
overload that you have. He wants to reduce your viral load, your fungal load,
yeah,
and your bacterial load.
yeah.
And then you're doing Taoist meditations for 8 hours a day. And
Right.
then I'm doing my own work on myself the other 8 hours a day. And so I just go into complete darkness and devote every ounce of my day to opening myself up. Plus, I take my far infrared dry sauna
Yeah,
into the darkness with me, and I'm in there and I sweat like that for at least an hour a day.
yeah.
And so I'm doing the meditating, the far infrared. I have a crystalline amethyst bed that I take with me as well. And so I'm meditating. I do acupuncture on myself every day,
Yeah.
doing
But you're in
what you
complete
call
darkness.
esoteric. Yeah, I'm
But
in complete darkness and
okay.
esoteric acupuncture. And so I just rent an apartment that they completely dark out. They bring me my food and they leave it for me. And that's it. I'm just eating, meditating, and working on myself 24 hours a day.
Wow. Wow.
And I'm getting ready to go back. I just got back in March,
Yeah.
and then I'll go back to go into darkness for 10 days in June, at the end of June, and then I'll go back in August again for another 10 days.
But here you go. This is not just the darkness. Listen to what you said. Here you have got, you use multiple modalities at the same time,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
there's the fasting, which is autophagy. So you're essentially stimulating huge amounts of metabolic pathways that get rid of the trash in your system,
yeah,
that kills sort of zombie cells and cleans up
yeah,
the dead cells around you. You're minimizing the chance that any cancers are growing. You reduce the amount of inflammation, of systemic
yeah,
inflammation. You clean out your brain. It's so
yeah.
beautiful. What a reset. And so many of us have got similar opportunities. Now you take it to the next level with the
Oh, yes, I do.
darkness, very much so, or even one level above. But here I am, as we are doing this interview, I'm on day 6 of a fast, and
Yeah,
it is beautiful. My body has completely switched over. I know I'm metabolically flexible, and it is actually a beautiful feeling. It is, I
Mm,
know that with every second passing, my body is taking more care of me. The amount of energy and clarity in my mind is beautiful.
yeah.
So you don't need to go to extremes because the low-hanging fruit are often something that gets you a tremendous way forward without you going completely off the rails. Many of us will not be able to, for example, not work for 10 days because money is tight, they're living in difficult circumstances, family commitments, etc. But there are so many things that we can do. And
Oh, yeah.
I think I look at you and see what happens when we push our boundaries. And I see when you push the boundaries in your stress, in your strain, as you call it. I love that actually. This kind of persistent stress that then becomes a disease driver in its own right
Yeah.
on all levels. You have done that. You're now pushing on the opposite end. What can I
Yeah.
do to really optimize my health? And I wouldn't be surprised if in 40 years' time, we both, as centenarians, are sitting here continuing our show and are basically saying, hey, it was cool. Yesterday I did a 3K swim. What did you get up to? because
Yes.
because that is what inevitably will happen. The only reason that the mean lifespan in the USA and around the world is about 83 years for males, and it's starting to come back a little bit. Now that's the lifespan. The health span in which you
Mm,
can do meaningful life, that's often ending by the time you come to the sort of nominal retirement age. So 60,
yeah.
65. That's when the diseases
Yeah.
creep in so many people who have not done the transformation that you have done, that I have done. So I think we are role models for that, that the past does not equal the future, and
Mm.
that we can go out there and live life to the fullest. And but you need to put the work in and you need to put the energy in, but in exactly the right ways, which you have learned to do over 30 years of time, isn't it?
Y- Yeah, I mean, the thing about it for me, when I look at humans and I look at humanity, and I realize that we're part of this wave of evolution.
Mm,
And in this evolutionary stage, because of the information that's been downloaded to me, I have a fiduciary responsibility
mm,
to humanity to be able to create pathways and opportunities for those
beautiful.
who are without resources, who lack the type of ambition that I have,
Mm,
and who have less mental prowess, right? And have less of a strong will, right? Their wills are weaker. And
mm,
so the question is, what can men like you and me and women like us that are driven, that are passionate, that are consistent,
mm,
that want to add great value to other people's lives, who want to be a role model,
mm.
what can we do to serve those around us?
Yeah,
And it's simple. I have to serve myself first.
beautiful.
And then I have to figure out systems that I can create that produce results that are
Yeah,
verifiable and repeatable and are
nice,
scientific.
nice.
And so that has been my goal and my driver for the last 23 years.
Mm,
And what you spoke to really touched me because I love to give people things that don't cost any money.
mhm.
Okay. In a relative sense, everyone can go to a fabric store and buy dark out material.
Exactly.
Everyone can afford the Velcro to attach to the insides of the windows and to attach to the dark out material. And
Okay.
everyone can afford a pair of dark out curtains. The dark out curtains don't need to be perfect, but if you have deep quality sleep, even if you're a
Yep.
dad and you're only going to sleep for 5.5 hours, if
Yep.
those 5.5 hours are in absolute darkness and there's not one photon of light touching your skin, you've taped up over the light for the fire alarm, you've taped up over the light for the TV, and there's no
Mm,
um,
okay.
fake human light coming into the space. even if you only sleep 5 hours, those 5 hours are going to be deeper and more effective
Mm.
than your best friend who's sleeping 8 hours with massive amounts of street light entering into their apartment
Okay.
windows.
Now that's a
And
beautiful
so,
thing. You can
right?
measure that. You can measure that by
Yes.
just, and for me, it's so important that we don't just try something and you don't know where your baseline is and you don't know where your endpoint is. I would add to that that you actually use maybe a smartwatch or some kind of measure of some kind of intelligence that measures the quality of your sleep, gives you an idea about your sleep architecture. Because that's then where you see, okay, right now my sleep score is 80 or something like that. If you now then put a measure in, say, okay, from now on, I will not eat after 6 o'clock and I will completely tape up that. We'll just do these two things, or even just one thing, tape it up, do the darkness, and then observe over a week how are your sleep scores doing. And you might find, huh, look at that. My deep sleep has improved. And that is really the time when we clean up our brain. That is the time when
Yeah.
miracles happen. So you
And
you
for,
see what you're doing and you see what is
yeah.
working or what not. It's beautiful.
And then for the people who don't have the resources, and when I gave that suggestion, it was for people who have limited amounts of money,
Yeah,
right? Dark out material is very inexpensive,
yeah.
and Velcro is very inexpensive. So the average human can afford to do that. Not everyone can afford a smartwatch
Mm.
and a
Oh, good
little
point.
app and do all those things.
Good point.
And so I'm speaking to the person who's without resources.
Brilliant.
Well, let's say they're less resourced. The way that you measure your sleep and the effectiveness is it when you wake up, are you tired behind your eyes?
Yeah.
And if your eyes are like you wake up and you feel normal,
Mm.
you feel energized and motivated, and your energy is consistent during the day, the darkness is having a measurable effect on you,
Yeah.
and you measure things based on how you feel. Because when you feel good, you do good. When you're tired, it's
Nice.
easy to make poor dietary choices. When
Absolutely.
you're rested, you make excellent dietary choices because you have the mental resource to be able to make a better decision.
Beautiful.
But when we're exhausted, people are going to lean towards simplified,
Mm.
toxic foods that are going to give them a shot of adrenaline or cortisol in order
Mm.
to be able to continue on with their day. But when
Mm.
you're sleeping deep, because you're in complete darkness,
Mm.
you will change.
Nice.
The men that I work with that
Yeah.
are urinating in the middle of the night and they do what I tell them, that urination in the middle of the night stops within 3 weeks.
Interesting.
Their
Okay.
prostates change just from sleeping in complete darkness. The bags under their eyes. I've had people come to me. Underneath their eyes, it's black, literally black.
Yeah.
And now it's returned to a normal color simply because they're sleeping better. Right? Like sleep, a lot of people they're not going to change their diet because emotionally they live in Poland. Their families always eat the same foods.
Yeah.
They don't have the courage to go, I'm going to do something different. But the one thing that you can affect is your sleep. And by changing
Absolutely.
that, you will eventually end up with the courage to be able to carve out your own pathway.
Yeah.
And so base things on how you feel. If you eat food and you feel sleepy afterwards,
Yeah.
that was a terrible food for you.
True.
If you eat food and you feel energized and consistent, then that's a great food for you. And it's easy to judge things based on how it's making you feel,
Mm.
as opposed to using devices that only a small portion of the world's population can afford.
I like that. I like that a lot. No, that's good. And
When you feel good, you do good. When you feel bad, you do bad.
that's true.
It's that simple.
Hmm. So sleep was something that you picked up early as a fundamental role changer, state changer for you.
Yeah, yeah. When I
What?
was in medical school, I had a buddy of mine who put the dark room. He put the pamphlet to go to Montauk Chia's dark room in my student file, and I picked it up and I started reading everything I could on the internet about darkroom. And I was like, oh, well, before I go there, I'm just going to dark out my space. So I bought a bunch of cardboard
Yeah.
and I was doing everything. I got very fixated and obsessed with having complete darkness.
Yeah.
And That was one of, I would say, of all the things that I did,
Yeah,
that was the most effective thing at
beautiful,
changing my health and my wellness.
beautiful. May I ask you, how do you use
Yeah.
social media? Do you use social media at all? Do you,
Yeah.
when do you, what are your guidelines for your own life? When do you switch off your screens?
When do I switch off my screens? Well, I'm following Dave Asprey now. You know who he
Mm.
is?
Yes, I heard about him. I
Yeah.
have not
Yeah.
looked
Okay. Heard
into him.
about him. So I've just started to order specific glasses to wear
Oh,
while looking at screens.
yeah,
And my challenge is I'm in this phase. Have you followed cardology at all? Like that might
negative.
be too outside of your realm.
No.
Well, basically, what happened is you're in what are called 13-year learning cycles, and I'm in this learning cycle of knowledge rather than spirit. Okay, and because I'm in this 13-year cycle, I am attracted to every bit of information that I can get around health and wellness,
Yeah.
and so I could stay up all night listening to podcasts. And so sometimes I'm very good at shutting off my screens and
Yeah.
being mindful of that, and other times I'm very poor about it. But I because all of the other things that I do,
Yeah.
I'm so consistent with,
Yeah.
I can afford to go over the edge.
Beautiful.
Yet there will be a point where I'll get a symptom where I'll wake up and my eyes are a little tired and I'll go,
Yeah.
okay, no, I'm not doing that anymore.
Exactly. And that's a beautiful. You're in tune with your body and you're now listening to the messages that it is sending. Because your body, your spirit, your mind, they are all incredibly intelligent on a subconscious level.
Yes.
And they
Yeah.
will
And a
feed back
super
to you.
conscious level.
Exactly.
Yes.
However you look at it
Yes.
from a spiritual point of view, we have we all have the unique ability to tune into these radios. But
Yes.
most of us have forgotten how to turn the dial because we expect it to be just happening, and it doesn't. You need to practice those
Yeah.
abilities. And some of us are really good at it. Some of us become these empaths. Some of us become these nearly supernaturals who not only pick up their own energy messages, but also energy messages from others around them.
Hmm.
Sometimes even from energies that no longer are supposedly to be on this earth. So this is all a very intriguing story. And I think it just shows that we as humans have become so focused on our ego, focused on ourselves, that we have forgotten that we are a part of a much bigger thing. And I think you
Yeah.
have experienced that. Just out
Yeah.
of interest, I wouldn't be surprised if you have been able to experience energy in ways that may appear supernatural or may appear strange to our standards nowadays. Did you ever do a past life regression, for example? Or did you ever go down these routes?
Yeah. When I was in the dark room, I spent, by the time you hit day 7,
Hmm.
um, your sensory perceptions begin to shift and change.
Hmm.
And so by day 14, I was, with my eyes closed and an eye mask on in absolute darkness, was able to see everything that was made of plastic that was man made in my room. Okay. I could be in the shower, I could see where the shower curtains were. Okay. As I started to build my violet light, I got to exit out of my body and I traveled around the universe with Akabi, who's the keeper of the Akashic records, okay,
Cool.
who showed me my past, showed me my present, and showed me my future and the things that I'm here meant to do.
Yeah.
And so I had a very powerful, life changing, what you would call esoteric spiritual experiences that are beyond what 99.9% of all
Exactly.
humans will ever experience.
Hmm.
And because of what I experienced, I have a particular responsibility. Once you're shown something, I
Exactly.
feel like, okay, I got it. You're showing me the breadcrumbs. And all my job to do is to follow those
Yeah.
breadcrumbs. So when
Yeah.
they show up and they arrive, I never question where the universe has taken me, because I know it's utilizing me for something that's much bigger than myself. And
Indeed.
like you mentioned earlier about the ego, I've been able to transcend out of individual ego into a collective ego to be a part of a service for evolution.
Yeah.
So that all humans, the other 99.9%, can get access to the things that you've been discovering,
Mm,
can get access to the things that the people have been sharing with you, to get access to the things that I've had access to, because
mm,
I believe that every human has a universal right to be educated about wellness.
mm,
And thank God for the internet. Thank God
mm,
for people like you who are podcasting. Thank God for people like you who are investigating. Like, if I do this, I can produce this profound result by making
mm,
this subtle change. We need more yous.
mm.
We need more me's. And we
Absolutely.
need to keep talking and educating and sharing our own personal stories so other people can realize that, yes, it actually is possible to
Mm,
heal,
mm.
to integrate, and to grow beyond the limitations of our ancestors,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
so that we can serve our lineage. Like, I know that when I heal, I'm healing my lineage. I'm making things better for my niece and my nephew and my cousins. I know that when I elevate my energy and my frequency, my consciousness and my intelligence, my entire
Wow.
sphere of influence is being elevated simultaneously. And once you know that, and you know that that's possible, you have all the inspiration that you need to make the difficult changes in
Mm,
order to become the best version of
mm.
yourself, because you have the data to prove that it's all possible.
Exactly. Oh, how beautifully said. That is so beautifully said because it is it's our duty, but it's also our privilege to be enlightened.
Yes,
It is a
yes,
gift. We too have
yes,
seen the darkness. We too have seen the pain. We too have seen the the brink. We were staring in the abyss. And for different reasons and at different times in our lives, but we have been there. And when you move away, when you start learning how to take the steps away from the darkness, and you actually not just seek the light, but become the light,
mm,
become that role model,
mm-hmm.
that is so beautiful. But it doesn't stop there. It is once you, uh, I always call myself an addict, but nowadays I'm addicted to growing. I'm addicted to become that person who understands himself just a little bit better, who understands maybe just a little bit better that new insight that combines the Eastern and Western philosophies, that combines the hardcore um, scientific studies with those things that I sense and that I can create, that I can we bring things together, we merge things. We are no longer living completely apart and subscribe only to one thing. Because if you only got a hammer, then everything needs to look like a nail or you can't deal with it. You have combined everything. You have combined Western and
Yes,
Eastern philosophy, Western and Eastern medicine, Western and Eastern insights. And I think that is where the beauty starts to happen. That's where the magic happens. Because we can create different, much stronger systems within ourselves than compared. So 1 plus 1 makes 3. You've got a synergistic
yes,
effect. And that is so beautiful to see. You are living that. And for that, I'm so, so
yes.
grateful that you have shared these insights with me and with people out there. Christopher Lee Maher, what a man. Um, if people want to know more about you, where can they find you?
I mean, the easiest place to go is to go to truebodyintelligence.com.
Hmm.
And the other thing that they can do, if they are on Instagram and they do social media,
Hmm.
they can punch in my name, Christopher Lee Maher, and I'm always giving a download of something every other day
Hmm.
for people who want little tips and tidbits
Hmm.
in order how to grow beyond their limitations.
Hmm.
And I talk about stress, I talk about stress reduction, I talk about stress management, I talk about stress resolution, and I talk about strain, which
Hmm.
is an uncovered topic
Yeah.
so far, but I'm going to dig into that more over the next couple of years. And the other thing they can do is they can go on Amazon. I wrote a book. It's called Free for Life. But if you want the downloadable version of the book, because I'm an auditory learner.
Mm.
If you're an auditory learner, you go to my website and you can order the book and you can start to get a profound education
Mm.
on stress, because the challenge is when people don't have the information, they can never make a good informed decision because they
True.
simply don't have the knowledge,
True.
right? So what I've done is I've broken it all down into digestible bits for anyone from a 5-year old to
Mm.
someone who's 77 years old, so they can at least start to build the mental construct necessary in order to be able to take an emotional risk and do something they've never done before.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Guys, look down there into the description of the YouTube video, of the podcast. Please also like and subscribe and maybe even share this interview with others, because we all can take small but consistent steps, and they often seem meaningless by themselves. But if you actually do that every single day, if you do a small course correction every single day, you will be amazed where you end up in a year, in 3 years, in 5 years. It doesn't matter what your baseline is. You might be crippled by pain, by chronic fatigue, by whatever it is. Try to bring a team around you where you are the dumbest member of the team. Learn from others who have been in your shoes, and bring that power team together. Let that be a good GP, a functional medicine practitioner, a coach, a healer. It does not matter. Every man and woman out there will be different, and your needs will be different. So it's very hard to predict right now off the cuff what you need. But spend the time with yourself and figure out, ask the right questions to your body. Your body will answer you. And then start working together with others. And what have you got to lose? Go over to Christopher's website and find out more and start the journey. Christopher has healed from coming very close to the brink. I have been very close to the brink. I have healed. So if we two numbnuts can do that, then honestly, rest assured, there is a fair chance for you guys out there. Okay. Cool.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
and one last thing, and
Yeah.
it's easier. Guess
Yeah.
why? Because when you and I started, this didn't exist.
Correct. Correct. Yep.
This didn't exist when we started,
Yep.
right? We were the trailblazers, part of the trailblazers that
True.
made this possible. Like if I got to start at 20 years old with the information that you and I have now, imagine what would happen to our lives. How
Touche.
effective, how loving, how kind, how generous, how sweet,
No,
right? That we
no,
would be able to be.
no, when you're 20, you're full of testosterone. You know it all better. Your parents don't know shit. No, you have to make the mistakes. Okay, my life is full of mistakes and bad decisions. But without them, I would have not come to this point in my life, to this true meaning of enlightenment. So we both need to accept.
But hold on. I have I have been training kids since they're 16 and 17 and 15
Yeah,
years old.
yeah.
And they're unbelievable because the paradigm has changed. You
Ah,
no longer have to step on your own foot in
ah.
order to understand that there's value in growth.
Oh,
You
beautiful.
can begin growing now. That's changed because
Beautiful.
of the work that we've done. They
Beautiful.
don't have to have problems in
Oh, I love
order
it.
to create light.
I love
They
it.
can
I
grow
love it.
from love rather than pain.
Oh, so beautiful. So beautiful. And indeed, I always keep saying we should put absolutely every person somewhere in their teenager years for a month into rehab. And just 28 days rehab, and learn about yourself, learn about your emotion, learn
Yeah,
about all those things that we otherwise have to learn the hard way during our lives. So it's
yeah.
beautiful. So maybe I should say they all should meet Christopher. And
Well, just take the step. Just realize that the old paradigm is we grow through pain, we grow through loss. The new paradigm is we grow through love.
Beautiful.
and they can step, they can sidestep
Wow.
all going to the brink. They don't have to do that anymore.
Beautiful.
We helped make that possible.
Wow, Christopher.
So thank you for doing all the good work you're doing with
And
others, and all the
Dieter,
good
the
work you're
same
doing
to
on
you.
yourself.
Well, exactly. It's so beautiful that for the two of us to meet. I could talk to you for hours.
Yeah, we
And
could talk for weeks.
which is beautiful, Christopher. It might
Yeah.
not be the last time that we
Yeah,
co-create, that we
hopefully not.
work
Hopefully
together.
we get to connect and
Absolutely.
hang out.
Oh, that would be
Yeah,
wonderful.
I
Cool. And
appreciate
you,
you.
absolutely. And I send you all the energy and love here over to you. Now, for you guys out there, please look after yourself and live with intention. Bye.
I never give up. I never give up. I never give up.